Hello, and thank you for joining Shauna Morrison and me for this consideration of an evolutionary system of mineralogy. We want to ask the question if there's one correct classification system for all minerals. Are there universal attributes that must be part of every system? And is the current system optimal for the future of mineral science? We're particularly interested in aspects of data-driven discovery in mineralogy, that is, looking at different aspects of the diversity and distribution of minerals, for example, through deep time. That's what we call mineral evolution. Mineral ecology is looking for the spatial distribution and diversity of Earth's minerals, and in particular trying to predict Earth's missing minerals. And there are a whole variety of visualization techniques, for example, mineral network analysis, that allow us to see mineralogy and the mineral kingdom in new ways and look for patterns of diversity and distribution that had been hidden before. Now, all of these approaches, mineral ecology, mineral evolution, mineral network analysis, they require a clear definition of mineral species. And again, we ask, is there a correct natural system, a classification system? The International Mineralogical Association says a mineral is natural occurring, and they define species on the basis of idealized end-member chemical composition of major elements and the idealized crystal structure. Now, this idea goes all the way back to James Dwight Dana, who clearly articulated chemistry and structure as the principal defining characteristics of a mineral. It's remarkable, this is in 1850, this was even before Mendeleev's discovery of the periodic table, or X-ray diffraction and the discovery of crystal structures. So what we're looking at then is a fundamental aspect of the classification system that is now used is that it ignores all that rich non-ideality, all the information. It takes the minimum amount of information to define a species. By contrast, minerals contain immense amounts of information, trace elements and minor elements, isotopes, defects, inclusions. Those are the things that allow us to understand the evolution of minerals, the evolution of planets, and the history that's embedded in that information. So we think the IMA protocols could be expanded in three ways. First, some IMA species should be split into several natural kinds. Some IMA species, on the other hand, should be lumped into one natural kind, and there are some amorphous and non-crystalline materials that just aren't considered because they don't fit into that IMA classification system. So let's look at these three problems. Now, in terms of splitting, consider the mineral diamond. IMA says that's pure carbon and the idealized diamond structure, but there are many different kinds of diamond. There's pre-solar diamond that forms around stars in the energetic envelopes in a vacuum environment. There's type 1 diamonds, which form deep in the mantle in an aqueous environment saturated in carbon. That contrasts with type 2 diamonds, which form in a metal that's saturated with carbon. That's different from impact diamonds, different from carbonado. Who knows, there may be more than 5 different natural kinds of diamond, each one telling its own historical story. You can do this for many other minerals. Calcite, for example, where there's calcite in meteorites. There's aqueously precipitated calcite, biomineralized calcite. I don't know how many different kinds of calcite there are, but there must be quite a few. On the other hand, IMA lists more than 30 species of tourmaline, but there certainly aren't 30 different ways that tourmaline forms. There are 30 different natural kinds, and is exemplified the fact that you have individual tourmaline crystals that are zoned where you may have 2 or more species in a single microscopic grain of tourmaline. And the same is true for many different minerals. There are over 100 different species of amphiboles recognized by the IMA, but certainly far fewer than that in terms of the number of natural kinds. And finally, amorphous materials like obsidian and coal, limonite, pyrolusite, these don't have a clearly defined structure or even a composition in some cases, but they're really important. Think about Mars. Curiosity has found some Mars sediments with more than 70% amorphous materials. You can't understand the evolution of Mars without understanding these materials. Now, we claim that natural kind clustering is the key to an evolutionary system where classification is going to depend on these rich, multidimensional attributes of minerals. This idea was published in 2019 in a paper in American Mineralogist. We've been applying it using large data resources that are available. For example, a large data resource on 8,000 pyrite specimens with a dozen different trace and minor elements, and they basically can be analyzed in this higher dimensional space. We're able to see very clear patterns, separate kinds of minerals based on their trace element distributions. And we've been applying this then to study different natural kinds of pyrite. One can do the same thing for stardust, the minerals that occur in different kinds of stars. We have asymptotic giant branch stars, which differ from supernovas and other kinds of stars, each characterized by their own anomalous isotopic ratios. There are big databases now of pre-solar grains, for example, of silicon carbide. We have a group that's been analyzing this, and we can spot different kinds of pre-solar moissanite, for example, coming from different kinds of stars. This can be represented in various ways, and clearly you see different clusters that represent different kinds of stars based on different isotopic ratios. These ideas have been brought together in a new series of papers. Part 1 looks at stellar mineralogy. We look at different kinds of minerals, but also where they come from. So you have supernova graphite, you have AGB moissanite. These can be represented in a beautiful bipartite network. These diagrams are invented and created by our colleague Anirudh Prabhu at RPI. You'll see two different kinds of nodes linked here. One type of node represents different kinds of stars, and those are linked to many different minerals. But then the other nodes are minerals that are linked to one or more kinds of stars, like graphite or moissanite. We can expand this by looking at interstellar and nebular mineralogy, so that network diagram expands. Here we've added the condensates in a solar nebula, those primary condensates. We can add different interstellar cloud minerals, including a series of ices that appear for the first time, and you see the whole evolution of minerals expanding in this expanding network. It gets even more complex when you look at chondrite meteorites. There's chondrule minerals, there's CAI minerals. We can even show the secondary alteration products, aqueous alteration, shock alteration. And all of these ideas are being brought together in a series of papers. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 are now in review, and Part 4 in review, Part 5 in preparation. So we now are expanding the idea, and ultimately our goal will be to have a single network diagram which shows all the minerals, thousands of mineral species linked to dozens and dozens of different paragenetic modes. It'll be an interactive diagram that represents the whole field of mineralogy. So in conclusion, minerals are data-rich objects that point to the nature of planetary evolution, including the coevolution of the geosphere and biosphere. Mineral classification today relies on minimal structural and compositional data. But this new evolutionary system of mineralogy embraces all that data, and it's based on numerous data-rich attributes of minerals which provide an alternative approach to mineral classification. With that, I want to thank our funders, the Keck Foundation, Sloan Foundation, John Templeton Foundation, Carnegie Institution, the NASA Astrobiology Institute, the Rutgers Enigma team, and thank you for listening. I hope there's time for questions.